Just one or two scattered showers, particularly over southeast England through the rest of today, but they'll be very hit and miss. Much of the south will be dry. Quite a lot of cloud for Northern Ireland, western Scotland. The rain easing off in Northern Ireland, but spreading through central parts of Scotland and into the southwest, and some rain for northwest England too. But much of northeast England dry, bright. Most of Wales, sunny spells in the Midlands as well, with some sunshine. Temperatures up to, say, 13 in Birmingham. Just 9 there in Glasgow with that rain this afternoon. That rain will work its way towards Edinburgh and then spread northwards through the evening, so we'll see some patchy rain for Aberdeenshire, Caithness and Sutherland before that all fizzles out. Still one or two scattered showers across the southeast through the night, but for many it will be a dry night. Where we keep the clear skies, well, a hint of blue on the chart. There could be some pockets of frost in rural areas. Towns and cities dropping down to 3 or 4 Celsius. There'll be some fog forming as well through the night. That could be quite dense for a time in the morning, but it should clear pretty sharply through tomorrow morning. And then it's a cracking day for the bulk of England and Wales. Fine too for most of Scotland and Northern Ireland, but the cloud will thicken here. Rain into the west of Northern Ireland, across the Highlands and the Western Isles through the day as well. But Glasgow staying dry, Belfast as well during daylight hours. 10 degrees here, but look at the temperatures elsewhere. 14 in Birmingham, maybe as high as 16 in London, with some hazy sunshine. Staying fine for most of England and Wales during Tuesday evening, but that rain will start to encroach towards Glasgow and Belfast during Tuesday evening, and then pepping up a little bit on Wednesday. So some wet weather around on Wednesday, but once that's gone, it looks like turning a lot sunnier for all of us come the end of the week, and turning warmer too.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome once again to a whole new week of On the Money, where we're focused not just on the military conflict between Russia and Ukraine, but the East-West economic war and the impact on Britain's cost of living squeeze. So what is the true rate of inflation? And why is the number so much higher for poorer households than for rich ones? We host a detailed discussion on the money after the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon, it's just 1 minute past 1. I'm Rosie Wright. I'll get you up to date here on GB News. Now, peace talks between Russia and Ukraine are ongoing. Ukraine say they've been hard today. They're pushing for a ceasefire, the withdrawal of Russian troops and guarantees for the country. Now, it says at least 2 people have died. Several others have been injured following a Russian missile attack on Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, this morning. One person was killed when a shell hit an apartment block. A second person died after being struck by falling debris in another area of the city. Alexei Goncharo, a member of the Ukrainian parliament, has been out in the capital this morning.
There was a missile attack just in the middle of Kiev. You see there's a burned down trolley bus, one car. One person is killed, 58 years old man. 5 are wounded. And that's just center of 3 million people now in the middle of Europe, real genocide. Putin cannot take Kiev with force, and he started a genocide against Ukrainian people.
Ukraine's president says it's only a matter of time before Russian missiles hit a NATO nation. Those comments follow an attack at a Ukrainian military base near the Polish border yesterday, which killed 35 people. This morning, the Polish Prime Minister said it was aimed at creating panic among the civilian population. In a video address, President Zelensky renewed his calls for NATO to implement a no-fly zone.
And now I repeat again, if you do not close our skies, it is only a matter of time before Russian missiles fall on your territory, on the territory of NATO and on the homes of citizens of NATO countries. American journalist Brent Renaud was killed today in Kiev region. His colleague is injured. It was a deliberate attack by the Russian military. They knew what they were doing, but not everyone in the West seems to know what they're doing.
A number of unnamed US officials have told multiple news organisations that Russia had asked China for military equipment to use in its invasion of Ukraine. Now, the Chinese embassy in the US says it wasn't aware of the request, and the Kremlin this morning has denied those claims. US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan warned Beijing it would face consequences if it helped Moscow. Director of the China Institute at SOAS University, Professor Steve Tsang, told GB News the Chinese president is likely to prioritise his political ambition, though, over helping Russia.
And the most important and basic interest of China for 2022 is for Xi Jinping to succeed himself into a third term of office. And he wouldn't want to take risk of attracting American secondary sanctions. So it is not because of American persuasion. It is because of domestic and personal political calculations.
The latest number of Ukrainian refugees to have fled the country is more than 2.6 million people. The EU Foreign Policy Chief said that number could grow to 5 million as the invasion continues. Well, the UK government's Homes for Ukraine scheme, which will allow people in the UK to offer spare rooms for Ukrainians, starts today. Those opening their homes for at least 6 months, rent-free, will be offered £350 a month. Police have entered the mansion of the Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska after protesters were seen inside earlier today. At least 11 police vehicles are on the scene in central London, along with dozens of officers. Mr. Deripaska is one of 7 Russian oligarchs that were sanctioned last week by the government. He has business empires, wealth and connections that are closely associated with the Kremlin. Boris Johnson says the UK will supply Ukraine with more than 500 portable generators. It follows a request by the country's President Zelensky. The devices will provide energy for essential services like hospitals, shelters, and will power 20,000 homes. Australia and the Netherlands have launched joint legal action against Russia over the downing of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 8 years ago. The Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison said Moscow was responsible under international law for the attack, which resulted in the deaths of 298 passengers. The Dutch government said in a statement the UN Security Council had also been informed of the legal action. You're now up to date on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's return to On the Money.
And coming up on The Money today, how a prolonged war in Ukraine could hit the pockets of the poorest UK households. A new report says that those on lower incomes, food and energy bills are spiralling, inflation is approaching double the official measures. As ever, we host a grown-up discussion with people who really know their stuff. Plus, each day on The Money features an in-depth Money Talks interview. Well, today we're talking to one of the UK's best-known and most successful entrepreneurs. That's John Caldwell, the guy who founded Phones for You, once the UK's largest independent phone retailer. He's adamant that the West stands up to Vladimir Putin and says he'd be willing to take in Ukrainian refugees.
And I want to do more help for the Ukraine, but I don't know quite how to make sure that my money, whatever I'm prepared to do, hits the spot. So I came up with this idea of taking a family in, because that way I can see that that family will have a good life and will.
That's later in the show. We'll be discussing if the real rate of inflation really is 5.5%. I want to hear from you. What do you think of these inflation numbers? Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @GBNews. So stay with us. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and you're on the money. The UK rate of inflation, the pace of which prices are rising, is officially 5.5%. It strikes me, if you consider the rising price of petrol, food and other necessities, prices are going up much faster than that each year, certainly for the less well-off, with a much higher share of spending on necessities. This Russia-Ukraine conflict has, of course, led to spiralling energy prices. While attention's rightly focused on the ghastly humanitarian fallout, it's impossible to ignore that Russia supplies 40% of Western Europe's gas and 10% of the entire world's oil supply. With the West now partially banning Russian oil exports, the price of crude has soared. Back in December, oil averaged around $70 a barrel. So far in March, the peak price hit $138, almost twice as much, although it's since fallen back. The price of gas has soared even more. This time last year, gas was €16 per megawatt hour. That's the main unit of sale on European wholesale markets. The peak this March has so far been €335, almost a 21-fold increase. This energy price turmoil helps explain why petrol and diesel are hurtling now towards £2 a litre, 60% more than a year ago. And also why household utility bills, already set to go up 54% in April, will likely now rise even more. Figures like these make a mockery of official claims that annual inflation is around 5 or 6%. Consider also Russia's a major producer of wheat and other crops, millions of tons of which are shipped out via the Black Sea, which is now mired in conflict. Many leading sea freight companies have already banned goods from Russia. They won't handle Russian produce, and that's causing food prices to spiral at a time when UK farmers are paying more for both fuel and for fertiliser. And that means the price of food grows at home is also set to rise. The Resolution Foundation think tank says the chances of living standards recovery this year are receding as rapidly as inflation is rising, and the risk of another recession is looming into view. Researchers say that with the poorest tenth of households spending twice as much of their budget on food and fuel as the richest, they're likely to be hardest hit, experiencing an inflation rate of perhaps 10%. Another think tank, also very influential, the New Economics Foundation, says that by April, a third of households may be unable to meet the cost of some basics. That amounts to 23.4 million people. And almost 40%, half of children, are included in this category, says the New Economics Foundation, living in struggling households. Now, on the 23rd of March, that's Wednesday next week, Rishi Sunak delivers his spring statement. As the cost of living squeeze tightens, the Chancellor's under huge pressure to act. On the same day, new inflation data will be published, and whatever that new number is, be it 7 or even 8%, there'll be millions of UK households for whom prices are rising much faster. And that's our On the Money question today. Why is inflation so much higher for the poor than the rich? I'm delighted to be joined by a host of guests on my show today. We have Sam Timms, who's an economist at the New Economics Foundation, whose research we just mentioned, and On the Money regular now, CEO of Fair Fuel UK, that's Howard Cox, and the Welsh farmer Gareth Wyn-Jones, plus our regular panellist in the studio, CEO of Blonde Money, Helen Thomas. She is with me here. Good to see you as ever. Sam, let's go back to that New Economic Foundation research. You've issued research today, so has the Resolution Foundation, two really heavyweight think tanks here. You seem to be weighing in at the same time, Sam, highlighting, yes, this cost of living squeeze is here, and for the poor, it's much more acute.
Yeah, Yeah, that's completely right. Yeah, so our analysis finds that come April, about 23 million people across the country are going to be struggling to kind of afford the essentials. And yeah, really, this includes 48% of children, which is a staggering number. And if you think about kind of the impact that this is going to have on the life chances of those growing up with kind of insufficient income, then it's a huge cost to the economy in the future.
Howard, let's turn to you. It's so difficult these days to have a conversation about Russia-Ukraine without thinking quite quickly, once we've considered the military aspects, the humanitarian fallout, which of course we focus on, fuel prices too. Is £2 a litre as an average now inevitable?
Well, it's a weird one, actually, Liam, and thank you for having me on your show. The issue we have at the moment is that when it hit nearly $140 last week, in only a matter of hours, it came down to around about $110. It's $108 now, and it's sort of stabilised. And so the £2 target, I'm afraid, I think may be a bit further away than we thought, which I'm delighted to feel about. But at the moment, we're looking at 170 diesel and 161 for petrol. It's still crippling, and it's still 40 to 50% more than it was 12 months ago, which lays weight to your point about inflation. What is 5.5%? That's Hans Christian Andersen, fairy tale stuff.
Let's turn to you, Gareth. We've talked to you on the money in the past. I think we're going to be talking to you a lot more as food prices start to spiral. We've discussed before that the cost base of domestic UK farmers in terms of fuel that they use and the fertiliser they use, they're both spiralling now. So even if we switch away from imported wheat and grain from Russia, from Ukraine, even homegrown food is now going to be a lot more expensive.
And it's time that government really step in now, because farming's not something that happens overnight. I've got calves being born here now that won't be ready for 28 to 30 months to go, into the food chain. I've got lambs being born now that won't be ready for 6, 7, 8 months' time. We've got wheat going in the ground now it's not going to be ready for months, Let's start looking at how we can produce more food in this country and making sure it's affordable. We are on the brink of a catastrophe. I don't care what anybody's saying. With the price of fertiliser, nobody is talking about this, Liam. We have to get the message out there. Half the world's food is produced with artificial fertilisers. We can't even get our hands on it. And what we're getting our hands on is now nearly £1,000, and they're talking about it going up to £1,300. It's absolutely ludicrous. We have to produce something, that's affordable, but we have to be making a living as well. So if we're not on the money very, very soon and growing more of our own produce, we are going to be in big trouble. You mark my words, this is serious, very, very serious, and it's about time somebody from the government, somebody with an idea of how to address a policy to bring things together so we're growing local, seasonal, affordable food very quickly. We're going to go hungry and we're going to be in trouble.
We know, don't we, Helen Thomas, in the studio, that poorer households spend a high proportion of their total spending on food, on fuel, on clothing, on necessities. So given that these are the things that are becoming most expensive, an inflation rate of them, the official number's 5.5%, that must seem like a sick joke.
Well, in defence of statisticians, God, I got that word out, but it's always been very difficult to calculate inflation because what is the standard basket of goods? However, as we are clearly hearing from all of your speakers today, and as you've been covering for a while now, there is no denying everybody's facing higher cost of those essentials. And as you say, the price of a Gucci handbag may not be moving around that much, but the price of, the pasta in the shops is. So I think, what we're seeing here in, really in-depth, great work from these think tanks, who you're here talking about this today, we're getting the actual numbers on this, but beyond that, and I was very interested to hear from your farmer there.
Yeah.
You know, we work in numbers, we're economists, but there's real people behind these numbers. And politics is all about the people. So, you know, those are pretty dramatic words that we obviously just heard there about the frankly, what appears to be a catastrophe happening in the farming industry. Pressure is going to build on the politicians to do something about it. That these numbers that appear to, you know, whether it's 10% or 20%, it's a nightmare for a lot of people.
Sam, let's go back to you. Helen Thomas there talked about the Chancellor. We've got this spring statement on the 23rd of March. It was originally meant to be just a little kind of update. Oh, here's some new forecasts. Move on, nothing to see here. It's not a budget, but it's rapidly becoming more important than most annual budgets. What do you want to see the Chancellor doing on the 23rd of March?
Yeah, I mean, what we want to see the Chancellor doing is reacting and supporting the entire economy, but primarily those on low incomes. So the best way for the Chancellor to do this is to increase universal credit. If the Chancellor were to put the uplift, that £20 uplift, back into universal credit, that would go a long way to dealing with some of the cost of living. But then on top of that, we need to see benefits, not just universal credit, but all benefits really uprated by the actual level of inflation. So as you're pointing out, inflation right now is about 5.5%. By April, it could be as high as 7 or 8%, but Social Security is only going to increase by 3.1%. And that's because benefits only increase by the amount as of September. And that's a 4 or 5 point difference and is going to have a real impact on the incomes of low-income households.
Well said, Sam. Indeed, the 3.1% inflation, that was back in September. That's the number traditionally used to uprate benefits the following spring. We'll see how the Chancellor handles that. This is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. After the break, we'll continue this discussion about why inflation, the true rate of inflation, is so much higher for poor than rich for households. Emails are flooding in thick and fast. We'll be reading out some of those soon. Stay with us. You're On the Money.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather update. A fine day for many today, plenty of sunshine around, but one or two areas seeing some showers across parts of southern England, and this weather front is bringing cloud and rain to parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland. This weather front in the south is providing just one or two scattered showers, particularly over southeast England through the rest of today, but they'll be very hit and miss. Much of the south will be dry. Quite a lot of cloud for Northern Ireland, western Scotland. The rain easing off in Northern Ireland, but spreading through central parts of Scotland and into the southwest, and some rain for northwest England too. But much of northeast England dry, bright. Most of Wales, sunny spells in the Midlands as well, with some sunshine, temperatures up to, say, 13 in Birmingham. Just 9 there in Glasgow with that rain this afternoon. That rain will work its way towards Edinburgh and then spread northwards through the evening, so we'll see some patchy rain for Aberdeenshire, Caithness and Sutherland before that all fizzles out. Still one or two scattered showers across the southeast through the night, but for many it will be a dry night. Where we keep the clear skies, well, a hint of blue on the chart. There could be some pockets of frost in rural areas. Towns and cities dropping down to 3 or 4 Celsius. There'll be some fog forming as well through the night. That could be quite dense for a time in the morning, but it should clear pretty sharply through tomorrow morning. And then it's a cracking day for the bulk of England and Wales. Fine too for most of Scotland and Northern Ireland, but the cloud will thicken here. Rain into the west of Northern Ireland, across the Highlands and the Western Isles through the day as well. But Glasgow staying dry, Belfast as well during daylight hours. 10 degrees here, but look at the temperatures elsewhere. 14 in Birmingham, maybe as high as 16 in London, with some hazy sunshine. Staying fine for most of England and Wales during Tuesday evening, but that rain will start to encroach towards Glasgow and Belfast during Tuesday evening, and then pepping up a little bit on Wednesday. So some wet weather around on Wednesday, but once that's gone, it looks like turning a lot sunnier for all of us come the end of the week, and turning warmer too.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. You're on the money with me, Liam Halligan. It's 1:22 on GB News TV and DAB Plus digital radio. We're continuing to discuss why the UK rate of inflation, the pace at which prices are rising, is officially 5.5%, but why so many poorer households feel it's that much higher. Today, a stark warning in a new study that a prolonged war in Ukraine could see the cost of living in the UK rise by as much as 10% a year, with low-income families hit the hardest. Sam Timms, let's come back to you. You're an economist at the New Economics Foundation. Your organisation is behind some of this research today. Do you think the political class understands the realities of the cost of living crisis for some of our more low-income households?
I would say yes, overall. And you can see that kind of the Chancellor has tried to do something over the last kind of 3-4 months, kind of the council tax loan, for example. But more can definitely be done. So kind of not just reintroducing the uplift and not just kind of increasing benefits by the 7-8% that we're likely to see, but kind of thinking more long term. We need a living income provided by Social Security, and that's where currently some in the political some in politics might not be necessarily kind of aligned with the reality for those on a low income.
Gareth Wyn-Jones, let's go to you. You're on the farming front line. Do you think the political class understands the extent of the cost of living crisis that's coming down the track?
Look, we live in a little rural community in Llanfyfechan here. You wouldn't believe, but we've got a food bank here and the next door village. It's really difficult. I've got a single mother, a friend of mine, and she's putting £30 to £40 a week more juice in her car, and she just can't afford it. You know, these are the things that people really don't realise how difficult it's going to be. And, you know, imagine we're just at the start of this. Imagine if, you know, the inflation rate goes up again and, you know, food's going to go higher up again. I'm not sure about fuel. Has fuel come to that point where it's going to stagnate? Let's hope to God that it has, because, you know, it just seems like every single thing that's happening is just the start of a massive disaster for a lot of us. I want to be producing affordable food for people, but I can't do it at the price of fuel now and the price of fertiliser. You know, I'm lucky we're quite regenerative. We're not heavily based on our fertiliser, but a lot of farms are, and they're talking now about cutting their stock to half. I spoke to a friend of mine this morning. He said he's going to get rid of half his sheep. You know, he's just not going to buy more work for himself. It's a really difficult time, and we have to address it, and it has to be addressed by government. You know, they have to get some kind of plan in state now, so we're able to feed the nation affordably, sustainably, and environmentally friendly, and it's not going to be easy.
Howard Cox, to you. Gareth Wyn-Jones in Snowdonia in Wales. He's hoping that fuel prices have peaked now. What do you think, and what do you think the Chancellor should do on March the 23rd in his spring statement?
Well, if I knew how much pump prices would be, I'd be a very rich person. I mean, sorry, it's not going to happen, Liam, as you know. And the anxiety and the worry out there is I mean, please, Rishi, wake up and smell the proverbial coffee. What he's got to act completely. Everything depends on distribution. We're even going to see red diesel going up 400% on April the 1st in terms of taxation. That's going to hit the construction industry. It's going to hit jobs, those sorts of things. He needs to do this. And we've launched today a campaign where we're asking fairfueluk.com to get our supporters and anyone else who wants to, is to contact their MP. We've made it easy to do that, to call for a genuine cut in fuel duty of something like 5p, at least, maybe even more. Already Ireland, Poland, Germany are cutting it. And we're also calling on him to actually pick up the phone and talk to OPEC countries and say, please, can you restrain the oil prices? It's in your interest. You're already making trillions of dollars because of the speculation and the betting on volatility. So please, can you get on that phone, please, Rishi and Boris, and talk to OPEC and get that sorted? And the last but not least is that we want to stop the opportunistic profiteering. I've been on your show before, and I've said this before, in 2014, when oil prices are about the same as they are now, and when you convert them into sterling to make it fair in the comparison, we're paying 10 to 15p more than we need be. And the government know this, so we're asking them to introduce a body like Pump Watch, something Ofgem, Ofcom, Ofwhat. Why haven't we got something like this for 37 million UK drivers, consumers? They need it. So I say it again, wake up and smell the coffee and do bloody something.
Briefly, Howard, before I come to Helen Thomas in the studio, would you support a windfall tax on those big oil companies, using some of the profits they've made, diverting them into a reduction in fuel duty for hard-pressed motorists?
Well, I'm not a great believer in government intervention in windfall tax and things, but I'm afraid I'm going to go against that and say, yes, Liam, I do support that.
Interesting. You got Howard Cox there. He's not a natural Labour Party supporter, I think it's fair to say. And there he is, supporting Labour Party policy, a windfall tax on the big oil companies. I mean, politics is being upended by this, Helen.
Completely is. And you do get huge political realignments when you have massive economic shocks. So, that should be no surprise. But, the trouble here, of course, is the government effectively has made a rod for its own back in its response to the pandemic to start with. We all remember Rishi standing up and saying, whatever it takes. Yeah. Whatever it takes. And unfortunately, those words have come back to haunt him now, because whatever it takes to deal with this could cost billions.
And in the newspapers today, we had Paul Johnson, director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies. He was on the Money last week, a very influential economist in his own right. He's saying, look, the Chancellor can't protect us all from this fall in living standards. All he can do is sort of knock off the roughest edges.
Well, that's it. I mean, this is the other element, is unfortunately life is horrendously hard at times for everyone, and I'm a natural optimist. I don't like to say that message to people, but frankly the pie is shrinking. Having to try and divide it up is going to get tougher and tougher, and there'll be losers. It's just who's going to lose more, and so that's where it comes. The government needs to target it, which I think is what we're hearing from these think tanks today. Indeed.
Sam Timms, let's give the last word for you. We're grateful to you for coming here on the show, On the Money. What's your message? What's your elevator pitch, if not to the Chancellor, then to the Prime Minister ahead of this spring statement on the 23rd of March?
Yeah, so really the elevator pitch is that social security needs to be increased. It needs to be bolstered to support those on the lowest incomes, and to get them through this kind of unprecedented time of huge increase in cost.
Sam Timms of the New Economic Foundation, thank you for your contribution. Gareth Wynne-Jones in Snowdonia there, a farmer who's deeply concerned about UK food security and spiralling food prices. Howard Cox joined us from London, who runs the Fair Fuel UK campaign, arguing that fuel costs should be lower. And of course, in the studio, Miss Blondmoney herself, Helen Thomas, thanks so much for joining me. This is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. Coming up, today's Money Talks interview is with the founder of mobile phones retailer Phones 4U. Stay tuned to hear all about his life, his philanthropic work of one of the UK's best-known entrepreneurs, and why he's concerned about Vladimir Putin's mental state. But first, the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon, it's 1:31. I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date on GB News. Now, further peace talks between Russia and Ukraine are ongoing today. Ukraine say they've been hard. They're pushing for a ceasefire, the withdrawal of Russian troops and security guarantees. It has at least, though, 2 people have died, several others have been injured following missile attacks on Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, today. Oleksiy Gonchenkaro, a member of the Ukrainian parliament, has been outside the capital this morning.
There was a missile attack just in the middle of Kyiv. You see there's a burned down trolley bus, 1 car. 1 person is killed, 58-year-old man. 5 are wounded. And that's just center of 3 million people now in the middle of Europe, real genocide. Putin cannot take Kyiv with force, and he started a genocide against Ukraine.
More than 2.6 million refugees have now fled Ukraine. The EU foreign policy chief said the number could swell to 5 million as the invasion continues. It comes as the government's Homes for Ukraine scheme, which will allow people in the UK to offer spare rooms to Ukrainians fleeing, starts today. Those opening their homes for at least 6 months, rent-free, will be offered £350 a month. Police have entered the mansion of Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska after protesters were seen inside earlier today. At least 11 police vehicles are on the scene in central London, along with dozens of officers. Mr. Deripaska is one of 7 Russian oligarchs that were sanctioned last week by the government. Well, his business, wealth and connections are closely associated with the Kremlin. You're up to date on GB News. We're on your TV, online and radio. Shortly, we'll be back to Liam for On the Money.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. You're on the money with me, Liam Halligan. It's 1:35. We've been discussing the rising costs of food and fuel, now a major concern, not just for UK households, but for our smaller businesses too. This is an issue our Northern Ireland reporter Doogie Beattie has had his close eye on, and he's been speaking today to certain people at a meat processing plant in Belfast.
Hello, how are you? And welcome to Armstrong Meats. This is the last of the meat processing plants in the centre of Belfast. Most of them are now out into the sticks, and they used to have a lot of staff that were Europeans. So staff in these plants has got harder to get, but also rising costs. I mean, we have spent the last fortnight, we've been in breweries, we've been on farms, we've been in farm shops, bakeries, butcheries, and all of them are saying the same thing. the price of raw materials is rising, the price of energy is rising, and of course that means that wages in places like this also have to rise. Just a short while ago I spoke with two of the directors of the company here, and this is what they had to say.
Yes, price rises have went up, and they're going up every single week. We got an email this morning that pork is going to increase by 25% next week. It's just non-stop.
There's a scarcity of beef worldwide, and of course the Ukraine war doesn't help matters either. Chicken has went up drastically in this last couple of weeks. Actually 2 rises last week alone. There's never a week that we don't have rises. Matter of fact, it's mostly daily. If it's not meat and pork, it is packaging.
They even talk about packaging. Cardboard has went up 70% in the last 3 years. That's not because of the Ukrainian war, of course, it's because of we sat at home during COVID. We ordered stuff online, and of course that all had to come in packaging. And during that time, lots of people weren't there manufacturing cardboard and packaging. We're also looking at the rising cost of energy here. Now, I've heard you through the programme talking about fuel, the VAT on fuel and how that plays out. Now, most businesses will be able to claim the VAT back. But if the Chancellor decides to drop the VAT on fuel, of course in Northern Ireland that will not apply because of the Northern Ireland Protocol. We're held inside the EU's VAT registration and so forth, and any divergence is brought through the European Courts of Justice. All those things are playing very, very badly for small business, and they are the backbone of our economy. And when you look at things like bank loans, when you look at costs of machinery and raw materials and having to get that cash flow right, it brings a whole new light to what must happen with the Chancellor's spring budget.
Doogie, great to have you on the show. Let me just ask you, you're from a farming background. You know Northern Ireland really, really well. We've just heard from a farmer in Snowdonia, in Wales. I talk to lots of farmers in the east of England where I live. There's a picture emerging, isn't there, of rising fuel and fertiliser costs for our farmers. So even if we divert towards more domestic production of food, by the time that food gets into the shops, it's still going to be really pricey.
It is absolutely scandalous. I mean, we covered red diesel being cut away a few months back. I don't think anybody else touched it. And that is going to have a big, big effect on cash flow. Although they get the VAT back on it, it still means that they're going to be out that cash for at least a quarter. We're looking at our crops coming in. Potatoes that we're planting now, Ukraine, the 4th biggest producer of potatoes in Europe, they'll not be out of the ground at all this year. Our potatoes won't be out until September, October, November. The price of fertiliser now, I think this morning I looked at it and it was nearly £800 a tonne. When we spoke about it last week, it was £640 a tonne. That is a massive hike in what farmers have to put into the ground. And a lot of that comes back down to European legislation. When we were told that we weren't allowed to put slurry in the ground between the 16th of October and the 2nd week in February, they basically choked farming. A lot of that legislation in round quota, especially, even with milk and dairy products, sent farming out of reach of normal small farms. Now that food security that we really need is beyond us, and we're going to have to get some way of getting back to our own food and our own fuel.
Well, Doogie, as you know, farming's a relatively small part of the British economy, but crikey, it's really coming into focus now as we consider not just energy security, but food security as well. It's an issue we're going to keep focused on here on the Money with your help. Doogie Beattie, GB News Northern Ireland correspondent, reporting from a meat processing factory outside of Belfast. Good stuff. And it's time now for my daily interview series, Money Talks. And today, we've got an exclusive interview with British business legend, a billionaire, a philanthropist, John Caldwell. John rose to prominence after he founded and built the UK's biggest independent phone retailer, Phones4You, which he then sold in 2006. Years on, Caldwell's now focused on property investments and philanthropy, not least his children's charity, Caldwell Children. In this interview, John Caldwell talks about his childhood in the back streets of Stoke-on-Trent and issues a warning about the dangers of Russian nuclear aggression. And as the government encourages us to take in Ukrainian refugees, Caldwell offers to house families fleeing Putin's invasion in his Staffordshire home, Broughton Hall. So here he is, entrepreneur, philanthropist, John Caldwell, my latest guest on Money Talks. Great to meet you, John Caldwell. You famously started Phones for You in the late 80s when I remember mobile phones were the size of bricks and even shoe boxes, and you sold the business in 2006. Were you always going to be an entrepreneur?
Always, yeah. I was always going to be an entrepreneur. I was always going to be successful, but never had any idea how. I didn't really have any clue about business whatsoever. No idea how to get started, no idea what to do, and no inspiration or advisors around me. So it was a tough road getting started.
You started on the road to business success with your brother Brian. You suffered 2 years of losses. Did you ever lose faith? Did you fall out?
I think my brother and I fell out a few times, but you know, he is a wonderful guy, and we've got a very close relationship. And there were stresses put on us by the business without any shadow of a doubt, lots of them. But because of the closeness and our joint loyalty to each other, we were always able to get through those things without any major problems.
What was it about you that made you an entrepreneur? You're famously proud of your origins in Stoke. You say you're Stoke through and through. You're proud of Staffordshire. You still have a home in Staffordshire.
Even more proud of the UK, I might add.
What aspects of your childhood, it was quite gritty. It certainly wasn't privileged in any way. What aspects of that made you the entrepreneur that you became?
Well, I think living with my grandmother in a terraced house in the middle of Stoke-on-Trent, first of all, did two things. One was, it was a fight for survival. That sounds a bit dramatic, but I think compared to kids today, it absolutely was a fight for survival. It didn't seem like that to me at the time. It was just life, just the way it was. You know, it was just what you did. But also my grandmother told me stories of the Caldwell family, and it was all full of entrepreneurs, successful people, mill owners, bakery owners, farmers in South Africa. And, you know, and it inspired me, I think. I mean, I can't really say for sure, but I think it inspired me in a way that I felt I needed to continue that tradition and break away from the back streets of Stoke-on-Trent and become successful.
You're famous for starting your mobile phone empire, then selling it. Just update viewers and listeners a little bit on the business activities you're doing now, aside from your philanthropy, which we'll come to.
Yeah, well, it's mainly property. I'm very, very heavily in property at the moment, which of course is a bit of a worry now with the Russian situation. I mean, we're worried about the Russian and the Ukrainian situation, of course, on a much more macro scale, but just purely on an economic scale, I've got a lot of property, a lot of exposure to property, and quite concerned about that at the moment because I'm building the world's most prestigious apartment block. There will be masses of customers for it, but you know, it's not good news that we're in this situation with the Russians, although I absolutely fully support these sanctions and fully support everything that we're doing, because we do have to stop this crisis that Putin is causing and this devastation of the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian infrastructure.
We'll come on to that as well, John. You spoke about your childhood in Stoke in the 50s and 60s, the importance of house and home. Do you think we're building enough houses here in Britain? Do you think there's an affordability crisis? I certainly believe that I couldn't have bought a house if I was 25 now, the way I did in the mid-90s.
Do you know, we go through periods in history where house prices to earnings fluctuate dramatically. And if you try and get on the housing ladder at the wrong time, when houses are very high, maybe wages are disproportionately low, and there's that ratio becomes broken, then yeah, it's very difficult to get on the property ladder. But it always was, you know, I had to borrow money from neighbours to get on my property ladder, and then I had to work 80 hours a week to try and pay them back and pay my mortgage. It's never been easy, you know. Who says life should be easy for any of us? I never had it easy. I mean, my life has been a total battle. Still is to some extent, although we're sitting in this luxurious property. But it's not all about money, is it? It's about everything else that happens in your life, who you're trying to help, what family health problems you have. You know, there's a whole sort of environment of issues and problems that you can have in life. So it's not just about money, but, you know, yeah, the property market's always been difficult on and off. It goes through easy phases when you can borrow easily, when interest rates are low, when house prices are not so high. But sure as anything, then when that will change, you know, and the people being able to get onto the property ladder start pushing the prices up.
Let's talk a little bit about Russia-Ukraine. You've been very supportive of Western sanctions, pretty unprecedented sanctions, sanctioning the Russian central bank, oil embargoes almost, back to the 70s, which you and I remember. There isn't a military war between Russia and the West, at least not a direct military war, but there's certainly now an economic war, isn't there? What are the implications of that?
Well, I've got 7 points of implications in terms of how it's going to pan out. But the most frightening implication, I don't know whether your viewers want to know the most frightening implication, but, you know, we have...
They're a hardy bunch, GB News viewers.
Well, I hope you are, guys, because this is a bit... it frightens me. When you've got a megalomaniac psychopath like Putin, and he's nothing less than that, he cares not a jot about human life. It's crystal clear. He doesn't care about the Russian people. He doesn't care about his soldiers, and he certainly doesn't care about the Ukrainians. When you've got somebody like that, when the back's against the wall, and his is already, you know, he will be losing support amongst his people. It might only be small. He will be losing support among his oligarchs, and he will be losing support possibly amongst his Kremlin cronies. He's certainly lost the support of the world, predominantly. He's going to be a war criminal. What all that says is his back is going to be right against that wall like a caged tiger, a starving caged tiger.
Makes him more dangerous.
Makes him more dangerous, absolutely. Now, to that point, does he get to the point where he thinks suicide is his only way out? I think he does. I think he will get to that point, potentially. It's a 10% chance this is, by the way. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but he will get to the point where he's increasingly perhaps depressed about the state that he's caused for himself. And if there's no interfaces between him and that nuclear button, is he the sort of guy that thinks, well, if I'm going down, the world is going down with me? Bang. Now, that's what frightens me. I think there's a 10% chance of that.
Let's finish, John, if we may, with your philanthropic work. It's a really important part of your life. I wanted to start with something you recently tweeted. You've got a house in Staffordshire, Broughton Hall, close to where you grew up. You've said that you're willing to take a Ukrainian family into one of the buildings you own there to house them for as long as they need so they can set themselves up here in the UK. How hopeful are you that that will actually happen?
Oh, I think it must happen. I've said I'm going to do it. I don't know how to do it yet. I haven't had a chance to look at the operational difficulties of that. I mean, I think I'll have to have somebody English speaking, because if I'm going to help them and inspire them, I need to be able to speak to them properly. So I think they'll have to be English speaking. But I don't want to just have somebody that's reasonably okay. I want to have somebody who desperately needs my help and try and help them and look after them and provide them with a future. And that future should be a self-contained future where I can help them get a job, help them be useful and productive. And if the Ukraine situation continues for many, many years, as is quite likely, and they're not able to go back home, that they've got a useful life in Britain. So I have to make that happen. I've said I'm going to do it. But also in my call was a call to action for all wealthy people that could afford to do the same. And if all wealthy people respond, and some of them are, there could be 1,000 families taken in and 1,000 lives transformed. But you know what's also very, very heartening that came out of this, because some of the responses I got were from families that said, I've got no money, I've got no spare money, but I do have a spare bedroom, and I'm willing to take a family into my home. That is amazing, utterly amazing.
And that makes you proud to be British, right?
Proud as hell. Perhaps not as proud as the Poles will be feeling at the moment, because if I was Polish, I'd be incredibly proud as well. But I am proud to be British. We're a great country, and we need to put every last bit of our effort into saving the Ukraine.
You are from a school of hard knocks, if you don't mind me saying so. You strike me as the kind of man who is more interested in giving people a hand up rather than a hand out, if you like, helping people to help themselves. Above all, in all the philanthropy that you do, what kind of people are you trying to help? What are you looking for in terms of the response from people who benefit from your charitable work?
Do you know, that's a really easy answer because it's Cordwell Children. And Cordwell Children I set up 22 years ago to help all children with all medical conditions, no matter what. And the only criteria was that they couldn't afford to get them help themselves. So we help every single child in the UK that we can, that can't get the help anywhere else. And these children are in desperate medical need. And the families are beside themselves because when you've got an ill child like that, you're not able to work. Sometimes both parents can't work. You know, they both have to be at home looking after the child. And their financial situation is devastating. And they've got a child that really needs ridiculous sums of money spending to give that child any meaningful life at all. And that is the thing that fires me up more than anything. It's where I put most of my passionate help into Cordwell Children. It's why it carries my name, because I was so proud of what we were doing. But it's really any humanitarian cause that really captures my heart, like the Ukraine now. You know, and I want to do more help for the Ukraine, but I don't know quite how to make sure that my money, whatever I'm prepared to do, hits the spot. So I came up with this idea of taking a family in, because that way I can see that that family will have a good life and will have a future. And I'll be very, very proud of my activity there. But more importantly, if I can inspire thousands of people around the UK to do the same, because there'll be thousands of wealthy people who could do exactly the same as me. But as I've already said, you know, there were poorer people who are just willing to give up a room to somebody to live in their house. It's amazing.
My final question is this, and it goes back to your roots. You were born a Brummie, but of course you grew up in Stoke, and that's the part of the country that's really close to your heart. What do you want Stoke to be in 20 or 30 years' time? It's such a citadel of British entrepreneurial genius over many years.
Wow, what an advert for Stoke.
It's on its uppers now.
Yeah.
Football team hasn't even got Rory Delap doing the long throw-ins anymore. What could Stoke be?
Well, that's a difficult question. And, you know, I'm British first, I'm European second, I'm world third, and I'm Stoke fourth. And that's the order of priority. I'm a humanitarian that wants the world to be a lot better place. I love Britain, and I want Britain to lead that charge to making the world a better place. We are doing that in the Ukraine because we are the #1 supporter of the Ukraine. Not many people know this, but we've done a huge amount, from supplying world-class missiles right the way through from training their army in guerrilla warfare many years ago. So we've done a huge amount, and I'm pretty sure that London is probably on Putin's #1 hit list if anything went wrong. So it's not a good place to be, but I'm proud that we've done that. I'm proud that we supported the Ukraine, and I'm proud of the British people. We're a wonderful country with wonderful values, and it's shown up when you look at my Instagram post where people are saying, come and live in my house.
John Caldwell, thanks for appearing on GB News.
Pleasure, thank you.
That was John Caldwell, the British business leader and philanthropist, the founder of Phones for You, and proud lad from Stoke-on-Trent. You can listen to the full 25-minute version of that interview, plus dozens of other extended Money Talks interviews, now on my Money Talks podcast, on the GB News YouTube channel, or via the GB News app. You've been sending in emails throughout the show on the real rate of inflation for poorer households. Mark says it's simple. The less earnings coming into the home, the bigger impact when prices increase. But a 50% or so increase is a disaster in the making. John says, I have to use super unleaded in my car as the E10 fuel was damaging my car's performance and miles per gallon. It's costing £1.79 a litre, and I'm only getting around 90 miles from £30. It's costing me an extra £10 a week. Now, that's all we've got time for. Thanks for joining me here. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and that was On the Money.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather update. A fine